happening.
That does bring up a good point. I mean, Joe Wilson and you have both talked about the fact that one of the big differences that you wanted to make between 2 and 3 was to have more memorable characters, to have more named characters that you were grasp onto and understand their story. What are some of the highlights for you in terms of the story that you've been able to bring into this game?
I'd say just overall, I mean, the introduction of Leah, she has a very interesting backstory. Her relationship with Deckard Cain as she grew up, he took her around, like he's been searching for the answers to how are they going to defeat the demons when they come back. So she's had a very interesting upbringing, scouring the world for these clues and these artifacts. And just in general, we really wanted to hit on the emotional aspect of the backstory of these people, like why they're doing what they're doing and what brought them to this place. So just kind of have that emotional resonance for the players.
Wow.
I have a question here from here's Mr. FJ. He said, I'm really hoping that you'll ask this, so here you go. What happened to the Herodric Cube from Diablo 2?
That's a good question. We haven't said what happened to the Herodric Cube.
This is a good time.
Break it for us here. Come on, Leonard.
There's something called the Nephilim Cube in our game.
Interesting.
Not related?
Unrelated.
Unrelated cube.
Okay.
All right. Here's this is an interesting question from Nicholas at P. Lock says, Leonard, will you visit high heaven in Diablo 3? You've been in hell. Will you see heaven? Or will Imperius be pissed?
Sorry,
any chance we're going to head to heaven?
Oh, we're not talking about that. That'd be awesome, though, wouldn't it?
It would be awesome. That's what they're asking. I don't know. All right.
We did see you did show 3 zones, actually in-game footage in the lore panel. Do you want to take us through briefly what those 3 zones were?
Yeah, Kevin was showing off the various parts of one of our acts. He showed Chaldeum, which is this big city. It's like one of the biggest cities in the world. It's the main trade city in the world, and it's fallen under the sway of Belial. We don't really know how he's controlling it or how he gained control. So that was like one of the places he showed. And the other place was the Dalgur Oasis, which is where they get all their water from. And it's another place that he has all his minions out corrupting people and basically creating havoc.
I love the concept in Chaldeum of how the wealthy people lived very high up and it was very regal and beautiful, and then definitely the difference between the character design of the plebes on the ground and how they lived and made the city work.
Yeah, so we just thought that was a very interesting way to show the stratification of society in that place.
It's very Doom-like to me. I have a question here from Chaos Smurf. I had to go to TweetDeck to finish it out, but Leonard, have there been times that you wanted to put something into a game, D3 or otherwise, but pulled back because it was too similar to the plot line of other titles?
No, I mean, and one of the great things about Diablo was that it had this rich backstory that just really had a lot of untapped lore. Like they had raised a lot of questions that really hadn't been answered, and even some things that really hadn't been brought up. They've touched on things in Diablo 1 that they didn't even touch on in Diablo 2. So we really had this great rich lore to draw from. And I don't think there was never any point where we said, we're getting too close to other stuff. It was just, it kind of had its own life, and it was very just fun to work with these ideas.
What is it like with your writing team if you obviously come across questions at a point in time that haven't been answered? What happens at that point? You sit down and hash out like possible creative solutions. What is your process?
Exactly. And it's funny. It goes on constantly. Mm-hmm. You'll work your way through quests, and you'll get a certain portion of the way done with an area, and then someone will realize that, oh, wait, what about this? And then you're like, oh, back to the drawing board. Because there is, you really want to keep all this stuff in context, and you want to answer questions, and you don't want to have big logic gaps.
Is that difficult to do with an IP, especially when you're trying to introduce it to arguably a very new audience 10 years after Diablo 2?
Well, what our goal was with this game was that we wanted to have enough background and enough history for hardcore Diablo fans to really sink their teeth into it. But you should be able to play this game without ever knowing anything about the Diablo universe. There's different layers of storytelling. The main story arc and the main story or the main level of storytelling is something that you can just jump into and gain a great appreciation from just from what's in the game. And then there's other levels where you pick up lore and you really talk to everybody and get all the side conversations that you don't have to have, but it's just digging deeper into it. And that's where we start to really touch on the Diablo and the Diablo 1 and the Diablo 2 lore and the deeper story stuff.
Very cool stuff. All right, we got one more question for you on Twitter. This one is Private Bundy again. Asks, can we expect exclusive bosses or places that only some classes will be able to play based on their story?
I'm sorry, I'm having a real hard time.
Sorry, the question is, can we expect exclusive bosses or places to play that'll be only for certain classes?
No, and one of the reasons for that is because we're so much based around multiplayer, and we're in a really drop in and drop out system. So if we were to, and we were randomly rolled worlds, so like let's say we were going to do something that could only be played by the barbarian. You know, I'm jumping into a game with a barbarian, so it's like, oh, well, we've got barbarian content. Well, then that guy drops out of the game, and we've rolled a world that has all this barbarian content for you, and now we have no barbarians to play it. So we did talk about that early on, because that seems like a logical thing to do.
Could you maybe have content if someone from your party is sort of, in that class, then they get access to that content and everyone together gets it? So you have to unlock it as a team?
Well, we don't want to keep people from dropping in and out. We want to make the multiplayer experience really easy to get into and get out of.
That's true.
And not really lock people in or like make it so that like, oh, well, you have to re-roll your game because the barbarian dropped out of your game.
Drop in, drop out is an important part.
What has the feedback been from the beta so far on the story?
We've gotten really good feedback on the story. One of the things that really helped us was before we did the public beta, we had an internal alpha and an internal beta, and we got a lot of really great feedback from the other developers inside Blizzard that really helped us even refine the story another degree. We thought we had kind of like refined it within an inch of its life, but no, when we got, the other developers were like, hey, why don't you guys do this? Why don't you present it this way as opposed to that way? That really helped us just bring it to that next level.
Perfect. Every voice matters, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of Diablo 3, we got a lot of good information out of you. Thank you, Leonard. And now we're going to head on over to the Diablo 3 open Q&A session where fans get to ask the team some tough questions.
Can't wait.
And see what they have to say. So that's going to be Jay Wilson and the team. We're going to head on over there now for that live panel, which will last an hour. And we'll be back here live on the stage with more special guests. Enjoy it live here on DirecTV.